Welcome back. The panel is joining us. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Hallie Jackson. New York Times correspondent Michael Schmidt, author of the new book, Donald Trump versus the United States. Look for scoops galore in that one. Yamiche Alcindor, White House correspondent for PBS NewsHour, and former Republican governor of North Carolina and radio host Pat McCrory. Welcome to all of you. I'm going to start with showing our apocalyptic campaign frame that both Trump and Biden created at their conventions. Take a look.
He is the destroyer of America's jobs, and if given the chance, he will be the destroyer of American greatness.
He's failed to protect us. He's failed to protect America.
The hard truth is, you won't be safe in Joe Biden's America.
Donald Trump's failure of leadership has cost lives and livelihoods.
Hallie Jackson, this isn't a campaign where you're wondering, geez, boy, both sides are kind of running on the same message. It's pretty clear. And I'll tell you, we heard those messages. 2 people were killed. We had 3 people killed this week in essentially what may be political protest. We're entering uncharted waters here.
I mean, you're completely right, Chuck, and it's something that we're going to be hearing a lot more about from especially the person that I cover, President Trump. I'm told by sources over the weekend as I was coming on the air with you, Chuck, that violence in the streets, quote unquote, will be one of the 3 central themes to the president's campaigning and the vice president's campaigning moving forward over the next 65 days or so, along with what they consider to be a focus on what they see as an improving economy, as well as talking about the coronavirus and what they are doing to try to mitigate the pandemic, if you will. Whether or not that'll be effective messaging for people remains to be seen. But this issue of violence is one that you've already seen the president, his allies, his surrogates talking about. They believe truly that this is going to be something that will motivate people to get to the polls. It's a message the president is expected to take on the road, Chuck. I can tell you that he is going to be traveling a ton. Over the weekend, he was telling allies that he wanted the best and most aggressive travel schedule. In the words of one person I talked to, he knows he can't win from inside the building. So it's a message the president will be taking out on the campaign trail heavily over the coming weeks and days. Look for him to be in Florida. Look for him to be in North Carolina. Obviously, right. Michigan, Wisconsin. I've heard a lot of talk about Minnesota as well, Chuck.
Yamiche, where are we right now? And where's the Biden campaign in this moment in your mind?
The Biden campaign agrees with essentially one thing that President Trump said during the RNC, which is that this is the most important election in the history of the country. Both of them are making the case that this election is going to be changing lives. And as Cedric Richmond told you, they see this issue of unarmed black people being killed in the streets as low-hanging fruit, that America should be able to get this right. So they see this as really pitching this forward and saying this is the chaos, the deaths that we're seeing from COVID, as well as the deaths that we're seeing from African Americans at 2.5 times the rate of white Americans at the hands of police, that this should be the central issue. We heard over and over again, they pitch this as a battle for the soul of America. That's the messaging that you're going to hear over and over again. And they're really going to be making the case that President Trump failed miserably on the coronavirus. I thought it was interesting as I was covering on the South Lawn of the White House today, that gathering of people with no masks, sitting shoulder to shoulder, cheering on the president on this hot summer night in D.C. The White House transformed completely into a convention space. The president started making the case that the United States was one of the best places when it came to death rates in America. So his idea and the plan there is going to be to try to paint this rosy picture and to speak about the virus almost as if it's in the rearview mirror. We of course know that that's just not true. The United States is second only to India in the number of new cases. We're seeing every day about 42,000 cases, along with the death rate being one of the worst, if not the worst, in terms of modernized, industrialized countries. So those two things, race and the coronavirus, are going to be top of mind for Joe Biden. And of course, he's going to be hitting the campaign trail after Labor Day as well, going to all sorts of states that he sees as critical.
Right. Pat McCrory, how does the president not walk a line and not look like he's rooting for violence? You know, Kellyanne Conway on Friday making the case that somehow that she believes this helps them. There's this line, and there's at times you look like, from a political perspective, it's almost the violence can be helpful politically, and that can come across as almost looking like he's rooting for it.
Well, back in May, when I was on this panel right after the sad Minnesota riots and protest, I gave a warning: do not underestimate the anarchist. And I actually think a lot of Democratic mayors and Democratic governors and even Joe Biden underestimated the anarchist and the feeling that people will have, especially the middle class, both black and white, against people who attack our police, who want to defund our police, who come across as anti-police, when most people in America are in favor of the police. They're not in favor of bad shootings, terrible, horrendous shootings. But what's happened is the anarchists have infiltrated peaceful protest and have gotten no pushback from the liberal wing of the Democratic Party or anyone in the Democratic Party, and it's put the Democrats on their heels regarding the issue of public safety. So public safety is now a major issue in this presidential campaign.
You know, Michael Schmidt, I think what Democrats would respond to Governor McCrory and say, that's one half of the problem. There are also right-wing instigators. It does seem as if right now there is some bad instigators almost looking to take advantage of this moment, maybe for nefarious reasons, maybe for other reasons we're not talking about. You know, and this to me is the real danger of this political moment we're in as a country.
The thing that I picked up on this week as this was all playing out with the conventions is just this idea that things are tightening. As we came through the summer, as the president struggled to communicate amidst all of these crises, there was this sense that Biden was really pulling ahead. But in the past few days coming out of this, there's just this prevailing feeling amongst folks, and maybe it doesn't bear itself out in every poll and everything, but that this is a much more unpredictable situation than we thought maybe just a few weeks ago. And that when we look back at 2016 and you look at Hillary Clinton's numbers at that point compared to where Biden is now, it's just that this is not a sure thing for anyone or for anything, and that this is going to be an incredibly unpredictable fall. And whether it's the virus, the politics, or the protests, there's just an enormous amount of unpredictability as we head forward.
Chuck, I want to also say I didn't say right wing or left wing. It's anarchy, and neither side can underestimate anarchists. And if we do, we're in trouble as a nation.
No, and I'm glad you clarified that. A lot of folks just automatically throw the anarchists onto the left wing, and I think that there seems to be instigators here messing around outside of either sort of political movement at this point.
Anarchists don't care. They just want to cause violence.
Exactly. They want to burn it down. All right, guys, I'm going to pause it here. When we come back, both political parties are fighting to register new voters in battleground states. But there's another group of voters that could prove decisive. Wait till you see that. That's next.
More than ever, businesses must
Hello from Washington. I'm Chuck Todd, and thanks for checking out the Meet the Press channel on YouTube. Click on the button down here to subscribe, and click over here to watch the latest interviews, highlights, and other digital exclusives.